It's time, and we now have a quorum. We shall get started with the meeting of the panel on development. During the meeting, please switch on the video function in the Zoom system and show your faces. Please also use a virtual background of specific colors. The microphone would only be switched on upon my instruction. Simultaneous interpretation service is provided in the meeting. You may choose the appropriate language channel in the Zoom system. First item on the agenda, information papers issued since the last meeting. The paper has been included on the agenda. Members, please take note. Mr. Edward Lau. I'd like to speak on the next item. Mr. Stephen Ho and Mr. Edward Leung, do you wish to speak? Later, you will be able to raise hand in the Zoom system and speak. We shall now first deal with items from the last meeting. Item number 2, items for discussion at the next meeting. The next meeting will be held on April the 26th, which is a Tuesday at 2:30 p.m. The administration proposes discussion of these 4 items. 1, Yuen Long South Development Funding Application, including Phase 1 development, as well as the detailed design of the Phase 2 and Phase 3 part development. Number 2, relocation of Diamond Hill freshwater and saltwater service reservoirs to Kevin's construction works. 3, infrastructure works for development at Kwun Tong Action Area. Number 4, footbridge near MTR Kowloon Bay Station Exit A. So there will be 4 discussion items at the next meeting on April the 26th. Any questions or comments from members on the proposed discussion items? If so, please raise your hand in the Zoom system. If not, we shall accept these proposed items. Our regular meeting in February did not take place due to the pandemic, and the administration wished to table other items to the panel for discussion and approval. And we have agreed to convene an extra meeting. Once the date is confirmed, members will be informed. We might not be able to cater to all members, but nonetheless, we hope members would attend the meeting as much as they can. We now enter item number 3, legislative proposals to streamline development-related statutory processes. I would first invite staff to clear the raise hand markers. For members who wish to speak, you may press the button later. So members who would like to speak, please press the raise hand button in the Zoom system now. I will invite members to speak in order. Attending the video conferencing meeting today, we have Mr. Michael Wong, Secretary for Development, Ms. Bernadette Lin, Permanent Secretary for Development, Mr. Vic Yao, Deputy Secretary from the Development Bureau, and their team. I would not introduce them one by one. First, we invite the administration to walk us through the paper. They will walk us through a slideshow. Secretary. Streamlining development-related statutory processes is an issue of much interest to the public, and LegCo. I would invite Ms. Lin to walk us through the proposal. Good afternoon. The streamlining of these statutory processes begin with our study. And in terms of these processes, including the environmental impact assessment ordinance, details would be reported at the panel on environmental affairs. The pieces of legislation we look at were established before 2014, and there were strong calls from the society to speed up the land making process. And this is one of our key objectives. And we have a few key directions. First, the statutory deadlines. For these pieces of legislation, despite differences in the actual provisions, in terms of the statutory time limits, that is the time between triggering the process and gaining approval, the time limit is as long as 17 months. Through these legislative proposals, we hope to halve these statutory time limits to about 9 months. But these would require complementary measures in order to be realized. When we look at the town planning ordinance, we propose 2 measures. First, if we are to compile a plan or rezoning plan, let's say if we want to rezone OU into residential, we would invite the public to give views. And currently, the process can take multiple rounds. So normally, in other administrative processes, there will be 1 round of public views. There will be a 2-month window to allow the public to make written or recorded submissions. And in terms of the town planning ordinance or town planning procedures, there is currently an arrangement of having public hearings. But from our experience, there could be a lot of redundancies. Participants might simply repeat what they have said in their submissions during the public hearings. So while retaining this arrangement, we want to enhance its efficiency. So going forward, after the town planning board considers the submissions, and if representatives are invited to offer more elaboration, that would be done. So hopefully with the new legislative framework, the TPB and its secretariat can draw up relevant guidelines. And now we shall look at the right side. We have a number of pieces of legislation, including those listed here. Certain procedures are currently not very clear. And in the past, we saw cases in which objections were raised, and the government might communicate back and forth with the objectors. So going forward, after a response is made, the objector can raise further views within a certain window, and that would conclude the process. For certain pieces of legislation, such as the roads, works, use and compensation and railways ordinance, minor works are involved. And for minor works, that could be approved by the secretary without going through a prolonged process of dealing with objections. However, the roadworks use and compensation ordinance has a rather narrow ambit. Very often, only certain scenarios would apply. For example, temporary closure of roads. So in the future, can we extend the scope to cover more minor works? For instance, in land reclamation, if we simply place some buoys or introduce some landing steps, that is something much anticipated by the public. And now we will talk about another point, which is to carry out different procedures concurrently. In the future, once we obtain approval from IXCO and the public has been engaged, we can begin land reclamation works without waiting for the detailed use of the site to be confirmed. That is, we can carry out land reclamation concurrently while deciding on the use of the land formed, and hopefully we can save some time in this regard. With regards to the lands resumption ordinance, we have two proposals. When we carry out land rezoning, for example, from green space to residential, very often there would be specification that the housing would be for public use, such as public housing. In the future, the lands department will start informing stakeholders would be affected, such as land owners, operators, or residents. If they have any comments on the future use of the site for public housing, they can raise their comments to LandSD. And if a piece of land is for public use and it is approved by IXCO, they might have to proceed to detailed design work. Since the land resumption is already approved, we will concurrently consult the stakeholders so that once funding is approved, the works can begin immediately. Currently, we must wait for funding approval from LegCo before we can get in touch with the residents or landowners, and that would lead to delays. Next, we want to avoid repetitively executing procedures of a similar nature. And point A is somewhat related to what I said. Currently, after the rezoning process, we might have to wait a few years before proceeding to land resumption. And that means the objections we receive could be related to the site. If we concurrently proceed with land resumption and rezoning, then we would be able to avoid repetitive comments a few years down the road. And point B Currently, the town planning ordinance allows anyone, including landowners, to raise or propose rezoning. And we will first proceed to a 3-week public consultation process. If the TPB accepts the application, they would proceed to drafting of the plan, and that would encompass another 2-month public consultation process.
But since there's going to be a 2-month consultation process, then for the earlier part, I think we can reduce or remove that. Here there are 6 steps. All these can be discussed in terms of the arrangement. Let's turn to A first. I'm sure members probably remember that when we put together a plan, it would involve various zones, and there may be some views about the height restriction, and they would like to lodge a judicial review, and the whole plan cannot be submitted to the Executive Council, and that will grind everything into a halt. The whole plan would be held in abeyance, and there may be urgent public rental housing or other urgent projects that cannot go ahead. We hope that by amending the legislation, we can break down an OZP and take out the part for which there is a judicial review, and the remaining part can be submitted to the Chief Executive in Council. And there are certain conditions regarding the overall principle. Now, when it comes to the formulation of plans, it is an executive-led process. It is to be approved by the Executive Council, although there is a public participation. The owners might want to rezone the land, that can be discussed, but we have to go by the executive-led principle. There may be some situations where people don't really want to see any development on a particular site, and they would then launch take some moves to rezone the land, and that would take up quite a lot of time. Obviously, if the members of the public have any views about the rezoning, then the views should be expressed through the established channels. C is to spell out the existing arrangement in no uncertain terms. People who raise objection to a project might raise the element of compensation, but this is not the issue that we're dealing with. I think we have to put it beyond doubt that it's not easy to be dealt with. In the land resumption ordinance, the stakeholders are actually the occupants or the owners of the land. We'd like to specify that under the law, only these people can raise the points. Now, we would state a particular purpose for land resumption, isn't it, with the EXCO approval, that we would then proceed to discuss the compensation. We also have the mechanism to handle this, and would like to make this clear in the law. E, under the land resumption ordinance, there is no specific procedure about the handling of objection, and would like to specify the timing and also the procedures. And F, from time to time, when the government resumes land for public purpose, let's say the resumption is for public rental housing, but after some changes to the needs, at the present moment, we have doubts of whether we are able to do so in order to use the land resources in the most effective way. Then we have to specify that the land resumed will be for public use. And these three recommendations are of a minor nature, but I don't think we should belittle all of these, because if we can save a bit of time here and there, if we can save the manpower resources, then they will contribute to the reduction of time that will be required for the production of plans. If an applicant is not happy with the decision, he can lodge a review, he can seek a review, and he has to state why he is aggrieved. And I think proper grounds should be advanced. And B, there is no restriction on further information to be submitted. And sometimes the applicant would submit further information and store the matter. And sometimes the matter will be stored for a pretty long time. And C, in formulating the plan, statutory plans, if we want to amend the plan, we need to have the EXCO's approval. And EXCO must go through the mechanism to convene a meeting and look at the plans. So we'd like to make it simpler. Perhaps the secretary or the senior officers can do the steps, but eventually the plan will have to go through the EXCO for approval. Chairman, I'd like to say that in amending the town planning ordinance, we'd like to streamline the steps. In 2018, the policy address was delivered, and there are not all places in Hong Kong do we have the enforcement power. I mean, it was in 1991, but before 1991, there were some OZP areas that we don't have the enforcement power. And these areas were developed. They must have the leases. They must be governed by buildings ordinance and all the rest of the ordinances. And there shouldn't be any irregularities. But in fact, many of these areas are in the rural areas, and they are on the old sites where the leases were very simple, and it would be hard for the lands department to enforce the law. So we hope that by amending the legislation, we can strengthen the provisions, and we can specify certain areas as enforcement areas, so that we can protect rural areas with high ecological value, but subject to development pressure or environmental degradation. We hope that we can highlight all these directions and solicit members' views. We will be spending time with the stakeholders, the institutes, the chambers, and various other parties to listen to their views. We hope that we will follow the stated timetable, and we will turn these recommendations into legislative provisions for members to scrutinize. Thank you. Thanks very much, Ms. Lin. I think the PowerPoints would be made available to members after the meeting. Any supplement, Secretary? No, Chairman. Thank you. Now is time for members to speak. I have received 17 members, 18 altogether. In the interest of time, I'll be more stricter with the timing. Edward Leung, Dr. Lo Wai Kwok, Stephen Wong, Wendy Hong, Chen Xiu Hong, Andrew Lam, Stephen Hong, Michael Luk, Chen Ho Fong, Alice Mack, Starren Lee, Edward Lau, Michael Tin, Lee Chen Keung, Dr. Priscilla Leung. I allow 4 minutes for the Q&A. As I said, be very strict with the time. Please make it brief when you take the floor. Mr. Edward Leung. Chairman, thank you. This streamline procedure will allow the approval of the plans in part, so that we will not have the whole plan affected by a small portion that is controversial. How many OZPs that have been frozen since reunification, and how many years of delay are we talking about in terms of these OZPs before? Chairman, we don't have any statistics regarding the situation since the reunification, but since 2011, there are 8 OZPs involving 16 pieces of land that they were affected by a judicial review. If I may cite a recent example, we have the Kwai Chung OZP. Like Mr. Leung said, there are some private lots where the owners objected to the height restriction, and there are 3 lots for popular rental housing. There is also a piece of land for sale, and we're talking about 1,900 housing units. Because of the judicial review, there has been a delay of 8 years. And we hope that through this legislative amendment, we will not see this happen again.
Thank you very much. I have nothing to add. Next, Dr. Lo Wai Kwok. Chairman, I'd like to express my support to the Development Bureau's proposals to streamline development-related statutory processes. Earlier, members of the BPA met the Development Bureau, and we have indicated our stance already. It's a pity that before the establishment of the SAR government, land formation was actually more efficient. In the 1970s, the colonial government started developing the new towns of Chinwan, Tunmun, etc. And the country parks ordinance was born at that time. So it showed that if we want to get things done, land formation could be very efficient. But in recent years, the process has been very slow, and this is something I don't understand. I served the town planning board on a voluntary basis. In 2012, I was heavily involved with the town planning board before I became a legislator, but subsequently, after becoming a legislative member, I had to quit my work at the TVB. You talked about consultation exercises, public hearings, etc. I think they have been excessive, and there is no limit to the speaking time of attendance, unlike LegCo. At times, the government has been sticking to the book too much. We lack housing, and yet the government was talking about landscape, ridge lines, microclimate, etc. Given the serious shortage of land, such discussions were meaningless, and at times it was very difficult to seek approval for certain applications, and as such the projects have stalled. That's why I support the proposed streamlining of the processes, and I think a key element would be for the government to change its mindset. For example, for country park enclaves, we had an opportunity to study or explore the development of public housing. We hope the SAR government would change their mindset and introduce good governance for the benefit of the public. Would you like a response? I think the key is whether the government's mindset would change fundamentally. I'd like to thank Dr. Lo for his support to our proposals. I think at different times our priorities could change. Our goal is to increase land supply in a reasonable manner. That would be our goal in the coming years. I'm reassured by the Secretary's response, and hopefully the public would feel the same. Mr. Wong Yuen-shan. Thank you very much. I'm happy to see the proposals from the Development Bureau to streamline development-related processes. I think land formation and housing are the responsibility of the SAR government. Many big projects would require 10 or 20 years, and there's certainly room to streamline the processes. As a whole, I think such proposals have struck a proper balance between efficiency and public interest, procedures, etc. And many proposals have addressed the recommendations of myself and our organization, including speeding up land reclamation, etc. The exercise is within the ambit of the Development Bureau. I urge the HA Housing Department to follow suit by streamlining processes related to public housing development in order to catch up with the progress of housing development. We hope that the government would also look at the issue of land leases. Would the land premium arrangement be extended to sites in the new territories and establish a clear timetable in order to reduce disputes related to engineering concepts in public works. The government introduced security of payment and relevant arbitration arrangements. Would the security of payment arrangement be extended to private developments according to the Development Bureau's safe design manual? There's no legislative effect or legal effect. Would you consider incorporating design for safety in the design stage in order to remove any safety risks? Who would address this question? I'd like to thank Dr. Wong for his views. Let me address his questions. In terms of land lease, in the revitalization of industrial buildings, I think the standard payment level could be extended to sites in new development areas. We will share our proposals very soon. In terms of security of payment, if this is to be extended to private contracts, then we would have to look at the issue and discuss the arrangement with the Construction Industry Council. In terms of design for safety, in terms of design, safety is always considered as to whether we would incorporate any mandatory requirements. I think we have to strike a balance between imposing requirements and efficiency, but nonetheless, we hope to ensure safety in the designs. Dr. Wendy Hong. Thank you, Chairman. First of all, a declaration. I'm the head of research of a developer, and my company is involved in land development in Hong Kong. The legislative proposals would examine all related processes. It will incorporate 5 directions. The government has done a lot of research, and if these could be implemented, land development efficiency could be improved substantially. So I support the proposals. However, the proposals are yet to work on some deep-seated issues. 6 ordinances would be amended involving multiple bureaus and departments. For instance, the Lands Resumption Ordinance is under the ambit of the Development Bureau. It also involves Planning Department, while the Foreshore and Seabed Ordinance would involve another department, and the Railways Ordinance would involve the Highways Department, and the EIA Ordinance would involve the EPD. Very often, a single development would involve multiple pieces of legislation and within the ambit of multiple bureaus and departments. And very often, developers have to work with different authorities, and there's a lack of coordination between different departments, and the views offered are often contradictory, and this makes life very hard for the applicants. For example, in a residential development, after the design stage, the DSD might impose certain requirements, and but then the highways department might not be satisfied, and the EVD could raise objections. So each department would provide, very often they would offer contradictory views, and the applicant would really suffer. And a lot of time is wasted in coordinating the work of different departments. In the recent land sharing scheme, in the land shared, 70% would become public housing, 30% private housing. And if government departments could not agree on something, the applicants would suffer. According to the policy address, the Transport and Housing Bureau would be split, and that would lead to a even more scattered hierarchy. So while streamlining the processes, would you consider setting up a project office so that the relevant work could come under a single umbrella? Then different departments could have some coordination and offer views. That way the projects could be pursued in a more efficient manner. I think expanding the minor works program is a very good idea, and we could streamline a lot of statutory processes and improve overall efficiency. We do have a system for minor works, but it's not often used. So it's a shortcut, but it's not commonly used by the government. So if the minor works program is to be expanded, how would it be deployed effectively? Who would make the decisions? Hopefully, the government can consider these views. You have exhausted your 4 minutes. So perhaps later or on another occasion, the government can offer a response. Dr. Yuen-shan, Chairman, I believe no one would be against streamlining statutory processes, but I think we should achieve a better balance between streamlining processes and safeguarding public interests. So land development cannot jeopardize public interest. So I have some comments and questions. The public consultation process has been streamlined to a single tier or round. Can the government ensure that while streamlining the processes, the public can still raise views, offer objections, or lodge appeals? The handling of public views should be fair and efficient and of great quality. The government should ensure that there's no conflict between streamlining processes and safeguarding public views. In terms of public hearings at the Town Planning Board, the TPB would only invite parties in which they feel would give constructive views. This is unacceptable to me. Public hearings allow individuals to offer their views. This is a key process. And if there is screening, then people's opportunity to take part would be jeopardized. Either way, I don't think efficiency would be a lot different. So this is a proposal I cannot accept. Concurrently, implementing different processes is a possibility. For example, land reclamation and planning could take place at the same time. How can the government ensure that while processes are conducted concurrently, the process is still fair?
Chairman, since this will have profound effect, will there be any consultation in LegCo? I hope that the administration will report to us on the views that they have collected. Thank you. Secretary? If I may respond on two areas, reclamation and planning. Now, the needs and scope of reclamation would be in place. Now, when it comes to the OZP, there may be some issues with regard to the alignment and specific details. I think the two going in parallel is appropriate. That the needs would have been established before. Now, Mr. Tixi Yuen talked about the public hearing. We feel that when it comes to public hearing, there will be a lot of written submissions under the EIA ordinance. There is also the written submission, and the TPP can invite people to air their views. That we don't really want to depart from the history. No, there will be no problem as far as due process is concerned, so as far as written submission. After Dr. Priscilla Leung, we have Mr. Lim Chen Keung and Mr. Liu Tang. And there are more than 20 members, not including myself. So before I call upon Mr. Chen Xiu-hong, I'm going to draw a line there after the last speaker, because we're off running the time. Perhaps the Secretary might wish to address Ms. Wendy Hong's point in brief later on. Mr. Chen Xiu-hong. Chairman, thank you. In relation to the legislative amendment to streamline the statutory processes, I welcome this because this is a step in the right direction. We are pleased to hear from the Secretary that the government should strike a balance between all different elements. That the government is removing the bureaucratic red tape and speed up the production of housing, and there is a need for that. I support the streamlining. I've got a couple of questions for the Secretary though. 1E and 1F. Under Railways Ordinance and the Road Works Use Compensation Ordinance, and also foreshore and seabed reclamations, and there is the minor work mechanism. I think the government should give us more details about why or how you're going to expand the scope of minor works. Second, Cap 131, the Town Planning Ordinance. In 2B, you will save the time for public comments in terms of rezoning under Section 12A, how you're going to do it. And 4B, the applicant seeking rezoning application under Section 12A. Now, there are some plots of land where the ownership is fragmented. Now, how are you going to deal with that? And there are some suggestions about the application for removal of trees. It would take a couple of years. So will this be reviewed? And in terms of fire installation acceptance, it would take a pretty long time. Will the Secretary be asking the FSD to specify all the time frame that the Secretary would like to introduce this bill to the Council? To have any specific timetable? I'm worried that there may be delays, and I hope that this can be scrutinized as soon as possible so that we can speed up the production of land for housing purposes. Thank you. Thanks very much, Mr. Chen. Minor works, where we will provide clear definition in terms of the scope. As regards the fire installations, we'll certainly liaise with the Fire Services Department. We're going to have the e-version of the statutory plan. The FSD certainly would be able to take part. We're aiming to introduce this to the Council by Q4 in the coming few months. We will be working very hard on that. 12A rezoning, Chairman. It's only the owners that can seek rezoning. We will be flexible about it. People who own part of the land will also be allowed to do so. And we do away with the first part of the consultation. The town planning will have some preliminary discussion. If they support the production of the statutory plan, then the department will take it from there. Now, with the plan available, there will be 2 months for the public to take part. So we're going to be saving a bit of time at the beginning. The couple of weeks of consultation, we do see the need for that. Next, Mr. Andrew Lam. Chairman, thank you. But to compress the whole statutory process, I think this is something we do welcome. No exception. In the paper, it says that these recommendations are one of the measures to speed up the process. Now, what about the other initiatives? Is the government making preparation for them? And I hope that there will be a reply there. And let me try to use the NDA in Hong Shui Kiu, for example. In 2010, the government started the community involvement. Between 2011 and 2015, there have been 3 public involvements. Even before the OZP came about, there have been 5 years of consultation. Now, there were 2 more years thereafter, and the OZP came about in 2017, and it was approved in 2018. Now, if you look at the entire process, we can see that there are good recommendations here, which I support, but the time you manage to save is really negligible in the entire process. Even after approving the OZP, now take Hong Shui Kiu, for instance. In 2020, it went through the Finance Committee, and the first phase in 2025, and second phase 2034. If you look at the entire process, there are some what I call the black holes that have to be addressed. And these black holes do not lie in the statutory process, but rather in the administrative process, like the land approval procedures and so on. And I hope that the administration will address all of these. If now we're taking this opportunity to rationalize the whole statutory process, in the paper, there is reference to the amendments to 6 pieces of legislation. That these 6 pieces do not represent all the ordinances that should be reviewed. Like, for example, water pollution control ordinance, the sewage ordinance, they have to be amended as well. Now, if we build a road, I mean, when it comes to a carriageway, even if there is a small nail on the road, it would cause a very bad tailback. So I hope that the administration will address this. There are 10 seconds left. Thank you. Thanks very much for your support, Mr. Lam. This is not the only exercise. We're going to be doing quite a lot. Now we will be reviewing the treatment of trees, and we are promoting MICs, construction, and all these will speed up the process. But the most important thing is the vision. The chief executive has rolled out the Northern Metropolis and the reclamation in central waters. Now, these will address the land shortage in Hong Kong. Stephen Ho. Chairman, thank you. My thanks to the Development Bureau for publishing this paper. Now, many people feel that the farmers are getting in the way of development, that this is not the case. Now, we agree with the paper to a certain extent. Ms. Lin mentioned some judicial reviews. Why do people lodge judicial reviews? Many of them are playing politics and they're creating trouble in society, but there are some people who, because of the development, we see their living condition compromised, and so they raise objection with the compression of the statutory processes. How can you make sure that you will be able to address the people who are affected? And this is one of the key areas in our resolution of the deep-seated problems. That the FC has approved a lot of projects involving some of the new towns, and there are dozens or so poultry farms or livestock farms that have to be relocated. What about compensation, rehousing, EIA? In taking forward the development, all these would give rise to social conflicts. Of course, we do have the timetable, but you may not be able to address these people's problems, like livestock farming. Now, I mean, in a pig farm, they have a few thousand pigs. When you carry out the development, it would be hard for you to address these problems. And I'd like to hear from the administration their response there.
For this, I would defer to Ms. Lin. Multiple government projects involve development, and we do emphasize communication with all parties. Mr. Ho talked about poultry farms. This is something we discussed before. So in terms of the freezing survey, compensation arrangements, and financial compensation, how can we streamline or improve our arrangements in terms of poultry farms? Upgrading is a key consideration. That is whether the government can provide support so that they could upgrade themselves or transform themselves. The Food and Health Bureau has engaged in communication with Mr. Ho, and I believe the process has started. And with the development of the Northern Metropolis, I believe we will communicate on a more frequent basis. I've been legislator for 10 years, but you only started the communication process right now. That shows the government's work in the past has been lacking. You said you would consult different parties. So could we line up a meeting with the agriculture and fisheries industry? We are certainly more than happy to do so. Mr. Michael Loh. On behalf of the FTU, I support the legislative proposals to streamline development-related statutory processes. Hong Kong has a severe shortage of land and housing. Almost 300,000 people are waiting for public rental housing, and the waiting time has hit new highs. So enhancing the efficiency of development is certainly the right way to go. The Hung Shui Kiu development has dragged on for 17 years. For prior new development areas, they only took about 8 to 10 years. And I have some views and questions. First, in terms of sites for public housing and government facilities at new town or new development areas, would the government introduce a dedicated or express mechanism to speed up approval so that people's waiting time would not exceed 3 years? Many town planning issues in the past were related to land resumption and compensation. In the new territories, we saw cases involving public housing development. For sites within NDAs, they would be classified as Type A, whereas for sites in other areas, they were only classified as Type B, and the landowners were aggrieved. So even if you cannot provide the full details of the development, can you at least promise that something would be done? That was a point of contention in the past. Under the proposals for Section 12A, applications under the town planning ordinance could only be filed by the owners. In the past, some unrelated persons or non-stakeholders use different ways to disrupt the development process. So in the future, can we come up with a better mechanism to deal with these views or incorporate these views so that people would stop inciting even more aggressive acts which would stand in the way of beneficial developments? Secretary. I'd like to thank Mr. Look for his support towards our directions. Sites for public housing are certainly our current priority. 70% of our annual residential site allocation is for housing. For TBB applications in the past, 80% were related to public housing, and I believe the ratio will rise further to 90%. The TBB will mainly deal with written submissions, and like we said, this is a fair and effective approach. And where necessary, face-to-face submissions would also take place. For new development areas, we must be careful, and we certainly do not want to make any speculations. At this stage, we are happy to take in the views of members, and at an appropriate time, we would report our work. Mr. Chan Ho-fong. Chairman, in the past, town planning procedures for developments were prolonged, and that is why many developments face constraints, including redundant processes. Our goal is to speed up the supply of public housing, and we hope we adopt a more people-oriented approach. The streamlining of processes would remove public hearings for processes related to public housing. Perhaps this move is justified, since LegCo can follow up on public housing issues. But for private developments, if you remove public hearings from the town planning process, then the oversight on developers would be removed. So for members of the public, the right of private ownership and their living quality could be compromised. So for planning or developments involving private developers, can we retain public hearings? And with the streamlined processes, by what extent do you believe public housing development would be sped up? I would first address the second question. In terms of the pace of development for different sites, like we said before, it takes about 6 years for sites to become formed or spade ready. And if we manage to streamline the processes, the process could be shortened to 2 to 2.5 years, or by 2 or 2.5 years. In other words, the process will only take about 3.5 years. We currently do not classify our projects into private or public developments or sites. For certain comments, such as those related to EIA, written submissions will be invited, and when necessary, the town planning board can invite face-to-face submissions. I have a follow-up question. I understand that written submissions are the most direct approach, but a number of residents from rural areas might prefer to express their views face-to-face instead of through written submissions. They can better express themselves that way. That is why we should retain this arrangement, since we must cater to people of different education backgrounds. We have noted your view. Mr. Edward Lau. Thank you, Chairman. I welcome the Development Bureau's proposals to streamline development-related processes, and this would help remove restrictions and speed up land development in Hong Kong. Could the proposal be tabled in the first half of the year at LegCo? If this is approved at LegCo, could these pieces of legislation be amended and come into force immediately so that we can speed up projects such as Land Out Tomorrow Vision and Northern Metropolis? I agree that many public consultation processes were repetitive and sometimes there was abuse. But in terms of public hearings, according to the government's proposal, the TVB will decide who to invite to public hearings. Can you shed some light on the actual criteria? So if the public wishes to express their views on a certain development, what options do they have? I'd like to thank Mr. Lau for his support to our overall direction. The process of developing farmland could be sped up by 2 to 2.5 years to 3.5 to 4 years. Like I said, we must discuss the issue with different societies, associations, etc. So we believe our current timeline of fourth quarter this year is already an aggressive target. In terms of inviting certain individuals to make oral submissions, I would defer to Ms. Lin. I believe with the help of the Secretariat, the TVB will drop its criteria on who to invite for oral submissions. But I would imagine that if the TVB, after looking at the written or recorded submissions, and for certain views that are raised by many parties, then the TVB might want to find out more. Let's say if a comment involves a housing estate, it might have 200 residents and an owner's corporation. In that case, the TVB might want to invite the owner's corporation to address questions from the TVB on behalf of its residents instead of inviting all 200 residents here to give their views. I believe reasonable guidelines could be drawn up through our experience. According to the Secretary, the next term government would introduce the proposals into LegCo. But in terms of the composition of the TVB, their KPIs, etc., there's still a lot of time to go until the fourth quarter. Secretary, Permanent Secretary, would you look to streamline such elements as well? Every measure or proposal would have its ambit. It's not realistic to include everything. And that is why we have included the more imminent issues. And this is not the only area of work we must work on. On the long run, we would work on whatever areas warranted. Miss Chen Yudming, perhaps she's not here. Mr. Michael Tian. So he's not here. Ms. Doreen Kong.
Chairman, thank you. I support this in principle, but the devil is in the details. I cannot comment in detail unless I see the provisions. In terms of shortening the time, some of the representations will be combined in one, and also written submissions can also shorten the time. But will this include all the changes to the statutory plans? So the people can add their views on the amendments. I think we have to strike a balance. I think we need to hear from the public, and I have to look at the amendments before I can comment any further. As to the foreshore and seabed ordinance, people can raise objection. Now, how do you work out the 17 months? The same can be said about the railways ordinance. For roads, works, use, and compensation ordinance, in terms of minor works, I think I have to look at the scope, the definition, before I can offer any comments. Because people cannot seek any compensation on minor works. As to the repetitively executing procedures of similar nature, can you cite us some examples like foreshore and seabed ordinance? It is under the Lands Department. Roads ordinance is under the THB. And the two bureau would have different considerations. How can you combine the two into one? The government should involve the business sector. There should be a platform involving the different stakeholders to speed up the process. Does the secretary have such a platform in mind? And if not, how soon are you going to have this platform? Well, thank you very much for your support. Of course, you have to look at the details that I understand. This represents the government's direction. Now we have the e-submission hub, whereby you can make submission, and all departments will have access to this hub, and things can work much faster. As to the foreshore and seabed ordinance, I defer to my colleague. Under foreshore and seabed ordinance, there are certain provisions regarding public comments. Under the ordinance, when submissions come in, they have to be dealt with within 9 months. And if they need more time, they can seek an extension from the chief executive. So we have 2 + 9 + 6. Overall, we'd like to shorten the time to 9 months. The member asked how we interpret deemed to be dealt with. Now, if the procedures can be handled in parallel, that would avoid a situation where we have to handle the same issue again. When we start the planning process, we would deal with the land resumption procedure in parallel. People may raise objection in terms of land use, in terms of compensation. If we can have these procedures in parallel, If they object to the change of land use, then we can refer the issues to the relevant parties for handling, and that would save time. Thank you. Mr. Michael Tin. Chairman, thank you. Secretary, I support the streamlining of the statutory processes. I think you should go the whole hog instead of going part of the way and come back for more. Now, let's say an NDA before the TPP is involved, there would be 3 rounds of consultation. And it would take anything up to 5 years. Now, for these 3 rounds of consultation for 5 years for an NDA development, is there any room for further cutback for us to save, let's say, 1 or 2 years? Can it be 2 years? Why do you have 5 years? Yes, Mr. Tin. Mr. Tin is actually talking about history. I mean, certainly we can shorten the consultation from 3 rounds to 2 rounds. Now, if administratively we can do it, we will do it. If you shorten the 3 rounds to 2 rounds, can this be done in 3 years instead of 5? It would be hard for us to speculate like this. Certainly it would be faster. Now, if you look at the new development areas, it would make a difference if the size is different. If the size is larger, it would take a longer time. So it's not hard. It's hard to generalize. If you shorten these from 3 years to 2 years, you're going to be doing it, and that's a breakthrough. And the timing would be hard to say. Okay, thank you. Ms. Chen Yunming. Chairman, thank you. Thank you, Secretary, for the proposal to streamline the statutory processes. I support this. I'd like to cite a personal example. Now, there was an open depot that was resumed for land for road use. And the depot has been lying vacant, and the landowner is a 70-year-old, and he's been there for more than 20 years. I hope that some improvement can be made with regard to resumption there. And also for the compensation, the mechanism for compensation is not moving on with times, and the land is normally resumed at a low price for development to the detriment of the villages. And I hope that the Secretary will change the compensation mechanism. You might take a leaf out of the book of Shenzhen and Guangzhou. And for rural development of rural areas, Taguling, for instance, there are a lot of irregularities. And are you going to be dealing with the fly tipping in the new territories in the rural areas as well? I thank you very much for your support for the direction we're going. compensation is a serious matter. Our arrangements are well justified. However, we are prepared to listen to public views. I'm not going to comment on any speculative matters. Ms. Chen referred to a particular case. We're not talking about individual case here, but we'll certainly follow up with Ms. Chen to see whether things can be done in a better way. Fly tipping is not what we're dealing with. If there are problems like these that are troubling the villages, there are mechanisms to deal with it. Thank you. Mr. Lee Chen-keung. Chairman, thank you. I think the government is thinking out of the box and address this serious problem that is besetting the public. I welcome that. The secretary said that the time taken for virgin land to be turned into state-ready land, it can be shortened to 2 years. In streamlining the processes, if you turn the virgin land into housing block, how much time can you shorten by? In our processes, sometimes the problem lies with the coordination or the conflicts between various departments. So if you want to speed up the process further, are you going to be setting up an interdepartmental platform to further compress the timing? Third, I've always been concerned about the balance to be struck in terms of development. I like the agricultural sector. How can we help them to upgrade themselves? Logistics sector, the depot and the maintenance on brownfield sites. How can you make sure that they can continue with the operation? I think you should introduce the private sector management strategy by introducing some KPIs, like the number of sites to be rezoned and the number of applications and the effectiveness of restructuring and upgrading some of the sectors, and also to improve the efficiency. Are you going to have some APIs there? Well, thanks very much, Mr. Lee, for supporting the direction. Now, let's say Green Belt site. If you want to build on it, you have to do the site formation. It would take 6 years. Now, for rental housing, it would take about 5 years. Now, to turn virgin land into state-ready land. Now, if this is supported by members, this can be shortened to 3 years. Mr. Frank Chen said that with MIC method, we can certainly speed up the process even further. We do have the efficiency unit in the development bureau. For large developments, we do have a dedicated team to talk with the relevant people, and this is to good effect. Now, for agriculture, we have the priority policy for brownfield sites. We also have the relevant policies, and these measures may not address all the problems, but they will certainly help to speed up the process. Dr. Priscilla Leung. Chairman, thank you. have always been concerned about the Development Bureau's policies. And because of the change of the procedures, I let other members take part in the development panel.
In terms of collaboration between different bureaus, as the Secretary knows, we have been following up on the West Kowloon waterfront or promenade. We hope that certain restrictions on buildings could be relaxed. You approved a plot ratio, but you were met with objections from the public, such as the case of Hyson. It was one example in which the plot ratio was approved early on, and subsequently the Environment Bureau updated or raised the environment. So it's about juggling the interests of the public. I see that very often different bureaus were working on their own, and I'm happy to see a breakthrough finally from the Development Bureau by streamlining the processes. So after you remove these barriers, would a cross-bureau steering committee be set up? For instance, the West Kowloon Promenade and water quality involve multiple departments under Development Bureau, Home Affairs Bureau, the Marine Department, Transport and Housing Bureau. So the work comes under many different authorities. So in terms of streamlining the development-related statutory processes, how much of these barriers are you actually removing? And how much of this require amendments to the legislation? If you are the only bureau who is putting in the work, I'm concerned that the problem might still exist with other bureaus. Thank you very much. Of course, there's always division of work between different bureaus. It's about achieving better coordination. The Transport and Housing Bureau certainly has a part to play. Next Monday, while the Environment Bureau will discuss EIA arrangements at the Environment Affairs Bureau. Water quality also falls under the ambit of the ENB, but we are always happy to offer help. But in terms of the overall coordination, I think we will leave it to the next time government. For major rezoning or projects, a steering committee must be formed. Perhaps it could be headed by the Chief Secretary. I certainly support the work of the ENB because they have provided a lot of support in terms of water quality, and the same goes for the Development Bureau. The ENB wanted to do something about water quality, but they have to go through a lot of departments themselves. So this is a task for you. You should consider the plight of many elderly citizens who were concerned that their properties could be occupied. Mr. Lam San Kang, I'm not a member of the panel, but I'm sure many people look forward to faster housing development or land development. But before that, we need to think about land resumption. In terms of the land rights ordinance, the development of Chou Tong land in the new territories, development is extremely complicated. Very often the land could not be resumed. So would the Development Bureau consider working with other bureaus to do something about the land rights ordinance in order to deal with the Chotong sites in the new territories? In terms of the land auctions, we will be able to share our proposal with this year. The government is also working on Chotong land. The Home Affairs Bureau is leading the work, and they will try to rationalize the arrangement on Chotong land. In terms of land rights, the ordinance has been in place for some 20 years. Were you referring to the land titles ordinance? This is of much interest to the legal profession as well. We will first work with the newer sites. For existing sites with a land lease already, well, the repercussions would be enormous. That's why we would first focus on the new sites. Thank you very much. Next, Mr. Bill Tang. Thank you very much. I'm not an expert in land planning, but I do know that a lot of people are eagerly awaiting housing in Hong Kong. In terms of assessment and planning procedures, the public impression is that the government is making life hard for themselves and the arrangements are unreasonable. Our Hong Kong Foundation pointed out that even for sites owned by the SAR government, it would take 10 to 13 years to complete public housing development, which is far too slow. Mr. Michael Lok has reiterated the view of the FTU. That is, we strongly support the streamlining of statutory processes and expedition of housing development. In terms of the possible impacts on the public's right to voice their views, are you going to do something about the approval of legal aid, which is often subject to abuse? In terms of OZPs, if part of it is subject to a judicial review, the remaining parts would not be affected. So what is your take on judicial reviews? Legal aid is not within the ambit of the Development Bureau, but we could find out what the latest position is in this regard. And for the Development Bureau, we want to streamline and rationalize the systems and processes so that we can minimize the risk of being subject to judicial reviews. If the legislative proposals are passed at LegCo, would the amendments be subject? Could the amendments be subject to judicial reviews? We do not see that that there's a high risk, but no one could rule out such scenario. We believe the proposals are reasonable, And once the legislative proposals are in place, the DOJ would examine them carefully before they are introduced into LegCo. I urge you not to underestimate the possibility of judicial reviews. The example of Mrs. Chu from the Hong Kong Dry Macau Bridge project was a clear example. This item involves many pieces of legislation. And since time is limited, I believe other members might have more to say. I suggest members to follow up through other channels by arranging meetings or sending written submissions. Legislative amendment could certainly reduce redundancies and save time, and I believe members are supportive of the proposals in this regard. Developments would involve multiple bureaus and departments, so something should be done to enhance the efficiency or coordination between different departments. You are both a facilitator and gatekeeper. And in terms of abuse of legal aid, something might have to be done to prevent abuse, such that the developments would not be stalled unreasonably. After I drew the line, a member indicated that he wished to speak. Dr. Junius Ho. I see that he's on the phone right now. This is an important item. I would offer discretion and give Dr. Ho 3 minutes. So please be concise. After that, I will conclude this item. Dr. Junius Ho. Thank you for allowing me to speak. I'm not a member of the panel, but I do hold an interest in development, and 5 pieces of legislation involved were under the ambit of Mr. Michael Wong. Of course, I would agree that barriers should be removed and we should expedite the processes. At the earliest, the work could be completed by the second half of the year. In terms of speeding up land and housing supply, in principle, this is worth supporting. Even if we revise the legislation, if we do not change the mindset of civil servants, things would not improve. I hope the Secretary would do his best through administrative means, how he could change the mindset of civil servants. So the problem goes beyond land supply. We are also dealing, or we also have to tackle the fairness of compensation. So for amendments 1 to 5, they involve the town planning ordinance, lands resumption ordinance, roads, works use and compensation ordinance, etc. We must correct anything that is unfair. For instance, the land valuation, we must pay attention to Basic Law Article 105. The compensation should be based on the true market value. And under the town planning ordinance and lands resumption ordinance, there are a number of technical methods which I would offer my views in writing. There were some contradictions which we must tackle. And under land resumption ordinance, there's the concept of public use. It is determined by the CE in council. But with judicial reviews, the judicial system has imposed a lot of undue constraints on the executive. So in the past, well, we need to correct issues such as the definition of public use. Thank you very much.
Secretary, in brief, please. Thank you, Mr. Janice Ho, for his support. Administratively, departments should be working together. If there are any problems in terms of coordination, we'll sort them out. Like the way we deal with trees, compensation. We do not make any speculation lightly, but we are happy to listen to members' views. If Mr. Ho has any particular views on particular areas, we're all ears. We are overrunning the time, and I've exercised my discretion to let members speak more. All right, and next item, extending the operation of Energizing Kowloon East Office. Members who wish to speak will please raise their hands, and I'll be inviting them to speak. First of all, I'd like to invite the administration to take us through the paper. Secretary, Chairman. My colleagues are sitting down. I'd like to defer to my colleague to give members a PowerPoint presentation. Thank you, Secretary, Chairman. There are three parts to my presentation. First, background, and then what I've been doing over the years and our way forward. In 2011, the EKE initiative was announced, and with the purpose of facilitating transformation of KE, and the office was set up until the end of March this year. Now we have the business area covering 488 hectares with working population of 288,000. We have the Sampo Kong business area of 206 hectares. We have seen an increase in the floor space by 3 times. We have developed a mobile app which can show the real-time parking information. Over the years, we have increased 17 hectares of public space. 80% of the people polled are happy with the open space. We've also held a lot of promotion activities, and 80% of people are happy. We have 50 plus developments that got the Beam Plus Gold award. In order to achieve transformation, we have 4 aspects that these include enhancing connectivity, walkability, developing a smart and green resilient district, ensuring sustainable growth, and promoting spirit of creation. And let's go over them one by one. We encourage the development of more pedestrian networks. We also have some short-term and medium-term improvements to the roads. We've seen a lot of improvements there. According to a survey, the traffic flow upon completion of these projects, we see a great deal of improvements. We're encouraging cycling in the district, and we provide smart public transport interchanges and air-conditioned interchanges, and we have the smart parking system. And there are some missing links there, and we try to link up the missing links to achieve better connections. Together with the CEDD, we have the walkways linking up the business area in Kowloon Bay, and the horizontal one linking up with the runway with the MTR station. At Kowloon Bay, there will be more landing facilities to improve the connectivity. We will review the planned pedestrian networks and examine how we can extend these networks to the residential area to help people to improve the connectivity. For the visually impaired people, we also provide the seamless guide. Number 2, developing a smart, green, and resilient CBD. We have tried the illegal parking monitoring system, and we share our data and experience with other departments. Government projects are used as good examples to include green, smart, and resilient requirements in the land sale conditions. We have a lot of lawns that not only can beautify the environment, they can absorb the rainwater. And we're applying this experience to other areas. Like the Kowloon Bay business area, we have the green spine linking up with an MTR and the business area. As a next step, we'll continue to use the Kowloon East as a test bed and pilot ground for new ideas and concepts. And we will try to replicate these in other districts. We see how we can use new technology, AI on the road. We try to make sure that we'll adopt a resilient design to cope with extreme weather conditions. We have the storage tank to collect the water for recycling purposes. Tree-ping River, we revitalized the Nala into a green and vibrant tree-ping river. And in the same May Street, we implement a project with automated parking facilities. We also have design competition regarding the Century Park. Third, we ensure sustainable development. We need to have steady commercial floor space supply. In 2012 to 20, we have provided 40% on average of the floor space. In the coming years, we'll continue our efforts to maintain a steady commercial floor space supply. We have the Kwun Tong action area, which will provide additional 500,000 square meters of space, and the total supply will be 4 million. This can rival Central. Fourth, promoting the spirit of creation. We conduct further studies to look at the history, the industrial history and culture of Kowloon East. We understand for a business district to be successful, we need to strive to achieve a vibrant and diverse CBD. We have place-making, urban design interventions, and strengthening of industrial heritage identities, and we'll organize more interesting activities which will be attractive. Ours is a multidisciplinary team. We adopt a visionary, coordinated, integrated approach. And we emphasize the coordination across bureaus and departments, facilitation of public and private development projects, and enhance public participation. We have provided one-stop advisory efforts to 130 plus development projects. We've organized a lot of water sports. We've held briefings, seminars, workshops, and forums, and conferences, and so on. We're going to have a visionary way to take forward our task. We'd like to take full advantage of the trust that we've built up to provide cross-departmental support. And I hope that our office can be extended in the days to come. Thank you. Thanks very much, Mr. King. And now is for members to speak. Members who wish to speak, please press the button. Dr. Lo Kwok, Andrew Lam, Tenka Pio, Wendy Hong, and myself. 4 minutes for the Q&A, please. Dr. Lo Kwok. Chairman, I support the work of the EKEO over the years. I've been concerned. I've visited their office on many occasions. I've taken part in the activities that they organize. And I've also taken part in some of the meetings involving the Kowloon East. This is proposed to be extended to 2027, and I support this. EKE covers areas that are old districts and also areas that offer potential for development, and there are many problems and challenges in the old districts, like illegal parking, and this is a historical legacy. We run short of parking spaces, and this is very much a problem. And it's hard to make any significant improvements because there are so many enterprises, big and small, that are operating in the area. In the old districts, how can you make improvements? And there is a lot that should be done.
Residents of Kowloon East were looking forward to an East Kowloon line, but apparently the project has faced technical issues, and apparently the government is no longer pursuing this project. Since the office has been in operation for quite some time, and the proposal is to extend its operation by another 5 years, would there be any adjustments to the structure of the Energizing Kowloon East Office, and how could things be streamlined? Secretary, I would defer to Ms. Chang. I'd like to thank Dr. Low for his support. You asked about our organization structure. The proposal is to extend the operation of the office by 5 years, and the structure will remain largely unchanged. In the past 10 years, we saw that the structure of the office has been successful. The office is headed by a planner and an architect, and different units are responsible for different areas of work, and we find this structure appropriate. Apart from the multidisciplinary team, we have both civil service and non-civil service staff, and the makeup will be adjusted. Mr. Andrew Lam. Thank you. First of all, I'd like to acknowledge the work of the Energizing Kowloon East Office. I have always believed in the importance of coordination in urban planning. The ambit of the EKEO has been extended in recent years to include Sempol Kong, which is a substantial area. Harbourfront development has seen rising public expectations, and towards the west, a lot of work is underway. Towards the east, for areas like Yau Tong and Cha Kuo Lang, there will be future developments. And I think there is currently a vacuum in terms of coordination. So for Secretary and Head of EKEO, do you have a role to play in terms of developments towards the east? Are you going to further expand the coverage of the EKEO? Thank you very much for the question. We will see further developments in Cha Kuo Lang in the future. For some private developments, the sites are ready and they have completed discussions with the government, and there could be new communities. For Cha Kuo Lang Village, we are working on relevant studies. It might be converted into public housing, and the EKEO has always had a role to play. For harbourfront related developments, the Harbourfront Commission and Harbour Office have roles to play, and these two organizations are under the ambit of the Development Bureau, so there has always been close coordination. In terms of expanding the ambit of the office, we have no such plans right now. So the extension of the ambit to include Sempol Kong was a proposal under the policy address. The EKEO currently faces a heavy workload already. in terms of connectivity with Cha Kwa Leng, we have launched a Choi Ping River project. There will be a pedestrian come cyclist bridge connecting to Cha Kwa Leng. So in the future, there will be connectivity between the Kwun Tong and Cha Kwa Leng promenades, and we hope this would be completed by 2024. Mr. Bill Tang. In the past, the EKEO were able to incorporate district views in facilitating Kowloon East development. In terms of district planning and the adoption of new planning principles and smart technologies, we have seen positive results. But is there room for further improvement? This is something we must think about. Under the EKEO, there are lots of professional posts on on urban planning and design. I think the EKEO needs an overriding vision. In East Kowloon, there are a lot of entrepreneurs, industrialists. They are concerned that this area would become a poor man's central. So what is the vision of this CBD? Even the Greater Bay Area development has an outline plan. So what about this CBD or East Kowloon? Are you trying to attract some companies who cannot afford rents in Central? This is something we have proposed. Our country expects the SAR to become a member of RCEP. So what kind of policies would you come up with to support this vision? The East Kowloon CBD should be deployed to connect with ASEAN counterparts. Our cruise terminal represents a key industry. We just do not want the East Kowloon CBD to become a poor man's central. So we must have a vision and a theme at East Kowloon. That way, the public, our businesses and industrialists would understand what this area is for. I'd like to thank Mr. Tang for supporting the work of the EKEO. I think the development of the district is an interactive process. In terms of employment or economic development, we never considered East Kowloon a poor man's central. Businesses who would consider certain factors in deciding their locations, and we are trying to encourage more businesses to come here. For industrial buildings, I believe our proposal or plan would benefit the community. Mr. Tang talked about collaboration with ASEAN. This is not under the ambit of the Development Bureau, but I'm happy to relay this to the relevant bureaus. Mr. Kitson Yang, I support the continuation of the operation of EKEO, but I do have some comments about its role. Hoi Bun Road, which is adjacent to the office, is heavily congested every day. And this is the only path connecting to the Kai Tak Cruise Terminal. And again, Kai Tak Hospital is located in the same area. The proposed monorail could have tackled the problem, but the proposal has been shelved. Are you going to reconsider the monorail project to improve connectivity? The location is very far from an MTR station and the access is narrow. So for the footbridge from Kai Tak Cruise Terminal to the area, I don't know when it will be completed. The congestion would remain and there are a lot of pedestrians. So it is not possible to achieve vision of creating a relaxed neighborhood. I'd like to thank Mr. Yang for his reminder. The EKEO involves pedestrian links. And as for the project as a whole, both ourselves, the ENB, THB have roles to play. At Hip Wall Road, for the southbound lane, turning left to Kwun Tong Road, something had been done before, and later, turning right from Hong Road. Currently, the Hoi Road, Kwun Tong Road roundabout is heavily congested. Once Road B3 is commissioned, it's not very convenient to access MTRs to the two MTR stations from Kai Tak Cruise Terminal. But once T3 road is completed, the situation would improve substantially. And we also have route number 6. It will be commissioned by 2026. So for those traveling to Kowloon West from Tseung Kwan O, they currently need to go through Kwun Tong Road, and the commuting time could be very long. Some routes would take more than 70 minutes. Once the trunk road is completed, the commuting time could be shortened to 20 minutes. So there will be substantial improvements in Kwun Tong in the future. Without monorail access, you simply cannot bring the people there. Even if you have a CBD, well, unless you drive, it would be very inconvenient to reach the area because you have to walk. Transportation is under the ambit of the THB. I hope you would work with the THB how you can rationalize transportation in the area. That way you can create synergy in the area. Thank you. Next, Dr. Hon Won. Chairman, first of all, a declaration. I'm the head of research of a local developer, and my company is involved in projects in Kowloon East. I have a question about the supply of commercial offices in Kowloon East. The project started in 2011. The context was that there was a severe shortage of commercial buildings, and the proposal of a CBD 2 would complement Central. The supply of commercial buildings in Kowloon East made up 40% of the total in Hong Kong. The floor space would reach 4 million square meters, which is comparable to Central. But in recent years, the mode of business has seen drastic changes. Work from home arrangements, remote meetings, or slashes are the current trend. did you assess the impacts of such trends on the demand for commercial floor space in Hong Kong in terms of the supply of commercial floor space in Kowloon East? Would adjustments be made to maximize the benefits?
Thank you very much, Dr. Hong. On a broader scale, there will not be any massive redevelopment. Obviously, during COVID, people are working from home, but people do have their interactions. As far as the government is concerned, other than the working habit, we are always upgrading economically. We are putting emphasis on innovation and technology. We have the INT belt towards the east, and in the Greater Bay area, we are making positive contribution, and we are optimistic about the demand for commercial floor space. Ms. Amy Cheung, yes, about the demand for commercial floor space, according to the Plan D 2030 plus, there is some projection in the long term, in light of what the Secretary said, the GBA factor, and also future development. We can see that there is a demand for Grade A of commercial floor space to the tune of 17 hectares. For some reason, maybe the global situation or COVID, the demand for commercial floor space fluctuates. But we do have a steady supply. We maintain steady supply. There are some projects that are under construction. We're going to have 3.9 billion. We're not on the same level as Central yet, but gradually we're increasing supply there. Steadily. Thank you, Chairman. I'd like to follow up on the traffic situation in Kowloon East. This is leaving a lot to be desired. The EKEO has been around for some time. We've seen a lot of changes. There are more commercial floor space becoming available. The government abandoned the idea of EFLS, and this is disappointing the public. Now, are you going to be considering any replacement option instead of monorail? And Kowloon East covers a vast area. Sometimes people may not be able to get this right, and this includes Sampo Kong and Kai Tak, as you said. So if you can publicize this so that people can understand the scope of Kowloon East, and that would be a good idea. The public do have some, do expect some substitute for the monorail. Perhaps you might wish to engage the public for some discussion there. Thank you for the questions. Now, if we have the opportunity to talk to the public in the community we are only too delighted to do so. On the question of the monorail, in 2021, we came to LegCo for a presentation. We find that there are 5 elements in the multimodal system. In answer to Mr. Kisson Yang, I've already mentioned this. In the coming years, the government's priority is to look at the multimodal system. That the platform at the Kwun Tong MTS station has already started. In 2025, this will be completed. And in action areas, we're going to be there's going to be some connection there. The waterfront road, now we're building 1.5 kilometers. And in 2023, this will be coming into use. Ms. Lee expressed some aspirations. If you do have any suggestions, we are happy to listen to them. It's my turn next. I'm grateful to the administration. For the work undertaken by the EKEO. Obviously, as a member and also as a member of the public, we hope that the government can do more. The office has been up and running for so long. Work is challenging, but people do pin very high hope. And you said that the organization is right. Now, for some projects, there may be changes to the leases, and like the revitalization of the industrial buildings. Is there any room for the EKEO to do more? There are complaints that when it comes to lease changes or lease modification, the lands department would spend an awful long time. So can you tell us how we can improve the efficiency there, and how much room is there for further improvement? Further aiming. Thank you for the question. Over the past 10 years, we've done a lot of one-stop facilitating service, covering 130 or so projects, and we try to help them speed up the processes. On many projects, we did achieve some success. We conducted some opinion surveys. 80% of the respondents are happy with our service. So it speaks volumes about the coordination work that we have undertaken. Now, sometimes people express difficulties, and we will try to help. If the private sector or the NGOs encounter difficulties at certain points, they're welcome to get in touch with us. Very quickly, Chairman. Sometimes the applicant and the lands department cannot come to an agreement over the premium, and we have the plan of premium payment at a standard rate. I think this would help. As of now, the operation has been very smooth. Thank you, Secretary. The pilot scheme of premium at standard rate perhaps can be enhanced, and I know that you need some time to get this ready. There are two more members, Mr. Stephen Wong and Mr. Kenneth Fogg. I draw a line under Mr. Fogg. Mr. Stephen Wong. Chairman, thank you. Secretary, ahead of EKEO, I endorse the work of the EKEO, in particular in place making and the policy implementation. It is very good. Now, Secretary, how do you assess the work of the EKEO? And of course, I would expect you to say good. If you say good, why don't you create more offices of this kind to achieve coordination purpose? Secretary, you said that this is a high-level decision. In the northern metropolis, there are so many different zones, Tin Shui Wai, Hong Shui Kiu, and there is a need for coordination on a district-by-district basis. Why don't you set up more offices of this kind to facilitate coordination if you think the EKEO is doing a good job? Right, thank you very much, Mr. Wong. I think the question is resources. Now we have the invigorating Island South, we have the Ocean Park, we have very good resources there. Now we have very good coordination mechanism, and we have to consider resources and see whether this can be replicated all over Hong Kong. The Chief Executive already said that in the next term of administration, there will be more details regarding the Northern Metropolis. Mr. Kenneth Fogg. Secretary, head of EKEO. In terms of culture and sports, water sports, and so on, the presentation covers all these elements. I'm pleased to hear them. Hong Kong, in Hong Kong, land is at a premium. It would be hard to survive for the art and culture groups. We have the art practitioners studios and all the rest of it. They are very good, and they're in industrial buildings. That in Kowloon East, the rental is on the way up because of the improvement in the environment. We're encouraging creative culture, but we have to address the survival issue. The EKEO has been liaising with the art and culture groups. What sort of views have you collected from them, and what about the future development? In terms of sports, Secretary, you mentioned water sports. I subscribe to this idea. Other than attracting overseas participants, I think we should have more large-scale sporting events. Hong Kong does enjoy an edge in water sports. I talked with the tourism board. Perhaps we can have some sort of water sports carnival on an annual basis. The Kwun Tong waterfront is a suitable location. How can spectators feel the competition? And this is a practical issue. There are so many yachts and boats. Birthday, if we want to build a water sports center, maybe there should be some arrangement to be made there. Thank you.
Secretary, I'd like to thank Mr. Fogg for his views. With regards to Mr. Fogg's recommendations, we shall have a discussion with the Home Affairs Bureau. We would strive to provide the resources on water. With regards to Mr. Fogg's recommendations, perhaps we can have a discussion together with Mr. Jack Chan on the potential use of this water body. I'm not concerned about the recreational boats, and suitable measures could be taken. At the Hong Kong Marina Club, in the past, there was an area for pedal boats. So I believe something could be done so long as we have a policy. As for the cultural facilities, I would defer to Ms. Chang. In April 2019, together with the Marine Department, we updated the guidelines on the Kwun Tong Typhoon Shelter. That is the use of the use sharing for vessels, and we were able to host water activities. We supported the proposals from some organizations on the use of land, such as the Hong Kong Canoe Association, Kwun Tong Sports Promotion Association, Hong Kong Water Sports Council, etc. And they will be able to host more water activities in Kwun Tong in terms of cultural activities. We have the flyover sites, and they can host art and culture related events. Since 2013, we have hosted more than 1,000 events at these flyover sites. And many people have taken part in these events. In the coming years, we will continue to support these events, and we will see new art and culture facilities such as the East Kowloon Cultural Center, Kai Tak Sports Park, etc. Hopefully, we can create synergy among these facilities. So that's all for this item. I note that members who spoke expressed their support. Do members support the submission of this paper to the Establishment Subcommittee? Dr. Low Wai Kwok, you express your support. If you have other views or objections, please raise your hand. If not, I consider that members would support the submission of the paper to the ESC. We now enter the next item, item number 5, 3068 RG, District Open Space Sports Center and Public Vehicle Park at Simei Street. Since we are behind schedule, please be concise as you speak. Can we first clear the raise hand markers for all members? Members who intend to speak, please press the raise hand button in the Zoom system, I will invite them to speak in turn. The administration would brief us on the paper, and they have prepared a slideshow. This item involves a funding proposal. Members, please note the requirements under Rule 83A of the Rules of Procedure. If members have any direct or indirect pecuniary interest, please disclose the nature of such interest before you speak. I now invite the administration to walk us through the paper. Chairman, members, myself and my colleagues would brief you on PWP item 3069RG. In the 2017 policy address, the Chief Executive announced that the Energizing Kowloon East initiative would be extended to Sanpo Kong. Sanpo Kong is an old industrial area. The provision of greening facilities, well, there's a lack of green facilities as well as pedestrian facilities, and both would require improvement. The Energizing Kowloon East Office has worked with different government departments in assessing the opportunities and issues at Sanpo Kong. The focus was on improving connectivity, improving the environment, injecting new energy. For item number 3068 RG, improvement of district open space at Simei Street and the East Kowloon Sports Center provided a very good opportunity. Together with the Tonghua Group of Hospitals Holistic Center for Youth Development, and synergy would be achieved with the Choi Hong Road facility as well. And under the single-site multiple-use principle of the Development Bureau, an underground public vehicle park proposed would ease the shortage of parking spaces. The Simei Street District Open Space Sports Center and Public Vehicle Park will be the first public work in Sanpo Kong under the Energizing Kowloon East Office. I would now invite the Deputy Head of EKEO to walk us through a slideshow, and we will be happy to answer any questions from members. I would now walk you through this item. The Energizing Kowloon East initiative was extended to Sanpo Kong in 2017. We started looking at how we can better utilize the Simei Street District Open Space under the single-site multiple-use principle and provide public car parking underground. The pink area denotes the site area. To the east, we have Rhythm Garden, and further to the east, there is the Choi Hong Estate roundabout, and to the south, we have King Tai Court, and to its east, we have the Kai Tak Development Area, and they are connected by a footbridge. To the west, we have the TWGH Holistic Center for Youth Development, which is under construction. The red area denotes the site. This is the current Kai Tak East Sports Center. It will remain in operation during the work, and this is King Tai Court. And this would be the new footbridge connecting to Kai Tak Development Area. There would be an underpass leading to the Kai Tak Development Area. The project was split into two phases in order to allow the public to start using the public space early. Phase 1, Kai Tak East Park, was taken up by the Housing Department. The work was completed and open to the public in August last year. And today we are briefing members on phase 2, which covers a new sports center and to enhance the current district open space while providing a new underground public vehicle park. This is the current Kai Tak East Sports Center. Due to site constraints, only one multi-purpose arena which can be used as a basketball court is provided, and there are outdoor basketball courts and an outdoor soccer pitch, and the facilities are lacking. The project site covers about 10,000 square meters. It will comprise a district open space, soccer pitch, and outdoor basketball court. At the new facility, a new main games arena would be included, which can house 2 basketball courts, as well as a fitness room and rooftop basketball court. And we will provide an underground public vehicle park, which provides about 300 public parking spaces for private cars, light goods vehicles, medium goods vehicles, heavy goods vehicles, and coaches, as well as motorcycles. In order to maximize the use of the site, we will provide an automated public parking system. Meanwhile, we would also take up road improvement and modification works. At the junction of Lookup Street and Chutpo Street, we will provide an extra traffic lane, and we will straighten the footpath at Simei Street to improve the pedestrian environment. We plan to consult the Public Works Subcommittee before seeking funding approval from the Finance Committee. And upon approval of funds, the project will complete in about 4 years. That's all for our report. The floor is now open to members. 2 members indicated that they will speak, Mr. Kitson Yang and Ms. Doreen Tong. Mr. Yang, 4 minutes, including question and answer. Thank you very much. I support the Simei Street project. But I hope the department can review its approach in certain items. The location of the car park is currently provided at Lookup Street. One has to go through Chapel Street and Lookup Street. If the exit is located there, would it get in the way of vehicles, which would lead to traffic jams? Hopefully, the design could be reviewed. As for the indoor sport facility, it would include an outdoor basketball court and tape ball cricket pitch. Would there be restrictions on the operating hours? It should not open around the clock. There are 2 housing estates in the facility. Residents would be affected. This is something we saw before. Would the facilities close at around 11 p.m.? During the construction period, there will be construction vehicles at Lookup Street and Chapel Street. They are very narrow and there is a lot of illegal parking. And there are a lot of heavy duty vehicles already since it's an industrial area. If we see a lot of construction vehicles, then access might be impeded. So you should pay extra attention to the presence of heavy duty vehicles. And finally, in terms of construction noise, this is something you would need to pay attention to. Thank you very much. I'd like to thank Mr. Yang for supporting the proposal. In terms of the location of the exit, if we look at the plan, apart from an entrance at Lookup Street, at Simei Street, we will provide a dedicated entrance to the car park. So we have addressed the issue. As for the operating hours of this sport facility and how it should be managed, perhaps I would defer to the LCSD. As for the management of construction vehicles and the noise issue, I would defer to the RCSD.
FEHD, ILCSD, management of the playground, the opening hours from 7 a.m. to 11 p.m. ASD, Mr. Tai, Mr. Victor Tai. In the course of work, the works vehicles will go through Simei Street and Lookhub Street for ingress and egress. Upon completion, the ingress and egress will be the same. So that would divert the traffic and will have minimum impact on traffic. As to noise pollution, under the law, we regulate the noise level. In the course of work, we do have the noise enclosure to minimize the noise impact. And we do reduce the use of noisy machinery. Mr. Rin Kong, if I may ask a question, you have the Kai Tak East sports ground that has been around for 50 years. Have you ever considered combining that stadium for better development? Now, this is an old stadium. Have you ever considered combining the two sites for development? Thank you, Madam Kong. This is a good idea. We did consider this. But in building this new sports center, we have to maintain the facilities. So that's why we are maintaining the sports center there. But when we look at the Kowloon East open space, we do have a plan for the sports center. And there will be demolition and redevelopment in order to maintain the facilities. We will not be demolishing the Kai Tak East Sports Center to maintain the service. There would be a number of years before the completion of the new project, and we will consult the members of the public about the Kai Tak East Sports Center. Indeed, we are going to be utilizing the site to its full potential, so please rest assured, Ms. Kong. Undersecretary, about this East Kai Tak Park or East Kai Tak Sports Ground, I hope that there will be better connection. That this project, the connection with the Kai Tak East Park is at grade. I hope that you will consider the connectivity between these two facilities and enhance the services there. Thank you. Thank you, Chairman. Certainly, better connectivity is one of our priorities at the EKEO. In particular, in relation to the Sanpo Kong business area, we heard what you say. We'll certainly have a look at this. Okay, we bring the discussion on this item to a close. Would members support the idea of submitting this paper to the PWSC for consideration? With those in favor, please raise their hands. Would the clerk record the member's intention? You do have the right to vote. Is it okay, clerk? Okay, then hands down. Those against, please raise the hands. I don't see any hands in opposition. So this paper by majority support will be submitted to the PWSC. So we bring this item to a close and let's move on to the next item. Item number 6. PWP item number 3475 RO, open space at Eastern Street North, Sai Ying Pun. So will the duty staff remove the hand symbol from the screen? And will members who wish to speak on this item please raise their hands? I'll be calling upon you to speak in turn. Mr. Bo, let's hear from the administration. And there will be a PowerPoint presentation by the administration. I'd like to remind members that under 83A of the ROP, if members have any pecuniary interest, direct or indirect, members should disclose the nature of the interest before they can speak. Shall we invite the administration to brief us on this paper? It's going to take us through. Chairman, thank you. I'm going to take members through this open space at Eastern Street North, Sai Ying Pun. Bear with us. On the northern shore of Hong Kong Island, we have the promenade all the way to the Fortress Hill, 7.4 kilometers long. It is the longest promenade of the Victoria Harbour. And this is on the western part of the promenade, near the Sun Yat-sen Memorial Park and the Western Wholesale Food Market. This is on the waterfront with a really magnificent Victoria Harbour view. Now we are adhering to the principle of incremental approach. And this was the HAT site of the DSD. And there were temporary facilities and we opened that up to the members of the public. And this is being used. And we are further enhancing the project. And we'll be providing better facilities for enjoyment by the public. This is measuring 13,200 square meters. Now we have the project scope here. I'll be going into greater details when we look at the pictures later on. We had a public engagement exercise. We commissioned a consultant to gauge the public views. And the public would like to have some active and sensory play elements, thematic planting, adequate shading, sea view, and spaciousness. And the sea view should not be blocked. So all these are some of the comments. Now let's have a look at the layout plan. On the west, we have multi-purpose area and climbing wall. This is intergenerational play space. And this is the waterfront area here. Over on this side, we have a viewing deck and a water play and sand play area. This is the eastern perspective. We have the observation deck. This is western perspective. We have the multi-purpose space, intergenerational play area, and a passive waterfront area there. As I said, this is a multi-purpose area on the west. A lot of open space, so with colorful design. And the public do like to engage in some sports exercises in the park. We have these kind of drainage type facility there. We like to keep that. They're already there. Moving along to the east, we have the intergenerational play area. This is one of the largest outdoor trampoline. We have a roundabout, even wheelchair bound people can use it. We have some ramp, and there is a play element there as well. And we also have a sensory wall with the Sai Pun as the main theme. As I said, in this inclusive play area, we have some passive open space. And one can see the sunset there in the west. Towards the east, we have an observation deck. It's going to be an inclusive design. And there is shading under the observation deck. This is water play area and sand play area. To the left, there is a fountain area, and to the right, we have a water play area for the kids. It's about 15 cm deep, and the water quality is to the level of swimming pool, and there is a sand play area there in the middle. Between the sand play area and the water play area, we have the sensory wall. And opposite there is a toilet for changing and for cleaning purposes. And this is the pool area. And also some of the designs there.
We plan to seek approval from the Public Works Subcommittee and funding approval from the Finance Committee. The works will require about 3 years for completion in 2027. The estimated project cost is $207.6 million. The harborfront will continue to remain in operation while works are underway. We are happy to answer questions from members. Deputy Secretary. Well, now it's time for members to ask questions. I would read out the names of members who intend to speak. Ms. Doreen Kong, Mr. Chen Hao-feng, Mr. Frankie Yik, Mr. Lee Chen-keung, Dr. Wong Yuen-shan. 4 minutes, including question and answer. Before I invite members to speak, could the Secretariat please note that I am a member of the Harborfront Commission, but I do not intend to speak or vote. But I'd like to go on record as being a member of the HC. Ms. Kong, please, 4 minutes. First of all, declaration of interest. I own a property in the area. I have a few questions. I would jog at the harborfront area every night, so I'm very familiar with the surroundings. Right now, many people would bring their pets to the area. The new park looks very exciting. There's a pool area and play area, and it would have a trampoline. By then, would you prohibit pets? If pets are allowed, they might somehow damage the trampoline or the water or the wet area or sand play area. Every time I go there, I would see dozens of dogs since the area is very popular with pet owners. Mr. Yao said the works would take 3 years to complete. And you said we can continue to use the waterfront in the meantime. There is a very narrow section. So in the next 3 years, can people still access the waterfront through the passageways? If the area becomes inaccessible, it would be difficult for people to use the promenade. For the lay-by for dangerous vehicles next to Sun Yat-sen Memorial Park, we often see dangerous goods vehicles, and that is rather concerning for residents. So in the future, there will be a pool area and sand play area. Would the lay-by for or the parking area for dangerous goods vehicles remain? I think there was talk earlier to relocate the parking area. For the community nursery at Sun Yat-sen Memorial Park, it's no longer a nursery. It's just a planting area. Deputy Secretary, thank you very much for the questions. In terms of our policy on pets, we remain open as to whether the park will be a pet-friendly park. The park will be managed by the LCSD. We remain open as to whether pets will be allowed in the park, since the works would take some time to complete before the park eventually opens. We would consult the community and residents, but in terms of hardware, the park can certainly accommodate pets. During the construction period, temporary passageways would be provided at all times in order to enable a continuous waterfront. And for that reason, the works might take longer to complete since we would not completely seal off the area. For the dangerous goods vehicle lay-by, outside Sun Yat-sen Memorial Park, there's a temporary car park for dangerous goods vehicles and other vehicles. It will become part of the park. Next to the Sun Yat-sen Memorial Park, the plant nursery is currently in use. It might be suspended in recent days due to COVID-19, but the nursery has always been popular with the public, and that is not part of the works area. Mr. Chan Hao-feng. Thank you. I'm happy to see that the Development Bureau and Harbourfront Commission has worked hard to make this park happen. When, as district councillor, we have been asking for a promenade as Western District. If we can relocate the parking area for dangerous goods vehicles, it would be the best. But the fact is, many drivers are concerned where they could go. Some would go to Taiwan, and this is certainly not ideal. Many drivers live in the western, central and western area. The authority said more discussions would be held with the transport department. So what is the latest position? In terms of the central and western district, promenade accessibility has been the main issue. In terms of north-south access, the only means of access is the crossing at Western Street. So how would the government enhance the accessibility as a whole to bring convenience to pedestrians? I see the park would encompass a sand play area, a wet area. In the past, we saw issues with the open-ended management at Belcher's Bay Promenade. People were skateboarding in the late hours, and some people were setting fires even. Since the park will have a pool area and sand play area, would that lead to management concerns in terms of the community plant nursery? I believe you should make big adjustments to the nursery. The Belcher's Bay plant nursery is running very well. The LCSD should dispose with the old approach of sealing off the area. The Belcher's Bay plant nursery has proved to be popular with the public. I think this should be adopted at all plant nurseries managed by the LCSD. I'd like to add a point about the temporary parking area for heavy-duty vehicles. We received a letter from the Hong Kong Transport Industry Association or the Freight Industry Association. Could Mr. Yao offer a response? Thank you very much. I'd like to thank Mr. Chan for his support down the years, and he offered valuable views. In terms of the dangerous goods vehicles, we are looking at a temporary car park, and it accommodates heavy or dangerous goods vehicles. And many of these vehicles serve different areas. So at the Fung Mut Road car park, there is space for dangerous goods vehicles. In our discussions with the trade, some expressed concern that Taiwan is too far for them. So we are considering introducing more parking spaces for dangerous goods vehicles at Fung Mut Road so that some of these vehicles can relocate there. However, the Fung Mut Road car park is limited in size and it accommodates different types of vehicles, and the other vehicles might need to be relocated. So this is something we must deal with. So we would discuss with the Transport Department on whether parking spaces could be provided elsewhere. We understand the importance of accessibility. The park is part of the promenade, and naturally, people would reach the park from the east or west through the promenade. For those who come from the Saying Pun area, it takes about only about 10 minutes to reach Sun Yat-sen Memorial Park via the footbridge from the MTR station. As for the crossing at Water Street, it might not be most convenient for pedestrians right now. Our promenade used to accommodate operations of the department and wholesale food operations. Eventually, we created a continuous promenade. Connaught Road West is a busy road, and there is also a flyover. So whether or not we can build a footbridge might be beyond the ambit of this project. The measurement mode is different from Belcher's Bay, while this park is managed by the LCSD. As for the views on or suggestions on the plant nursery, we have noted the views. I believe the LCSD would consider the views given. In terms of accessibility, more signages could be introduced for the public. Mr. Frankie, thank you. It is not that I do not support the government's idea of providing more harborfront sites for the public, but the government is obliged to balance the needs of different parties. Hong Kong has always lacked parking space for commercial vehicles. For every 100 heavy-duty vehicles, there are only 6 lots. And for the temporary car park at Eastern Street North, it has been in operation for a long time. Apart from commercial vehicles, it accommodates about 50 dangerous goods vehicles. Under the law, dangerous goods vehicles could not be parked anywhere. The government's proposal is to relocate some of them to Fung Mut Road car park, and if needed, the Chai Wan car park as well. Like other members said, this is not very reasonable. It's wrong to ask people to park their vehicles in Eastern District if they live in Western District. Currently at Fung Yip Road, there are 7 to 8 commercial vehicles. So what happens if you relocate the vehicles from Eastern Street there? The government is simply creating a new problem. Construction is yet to begin, so the government can reconsider the proposal. The narrow section at the promenade needs to be widened, but do you need to take over the entire site? I visited the plant nursery. Basically, it's abandoned, and that's not because of COVID. The government can recover the site and use it to accommodate some commercial vehicles. Meanwhile, they can widen part of the promenade for the benefit of the public. By replanning the area, you can achieve a win-win situation. So I wonder why the government is not considering the plan in a holistic manner. So there's no way I could support the project. Can the government tell us what their future plan is?
Deputy Secretary, as I said in answer to earlier questions, in this project, we hope that more spaces will be reserved in the district. As I said, one of the measures is on Format Road. We can designate more spaces for the dangerous goods vehicles. Members have a point that some of the vehicles may be squeezed out on Format Road. And the Sicey Street in Kennedy Road and Connell Road, under the flyover there can be some space that can be used. And perhaps we can increase some more spaces in the district for these vehicles. And this is one of the areas that we're looking at. This Eastern Street North is a temporary site. And this can be a suitable choice, but we do have to consider some relief measures to cater for the dangerous goods vehicles. Deputy Secretary, how soon will this be resumed? The car park to the north will have to be recovered. It should happen by May. Mr. Lee Chen-keung. Chairman, thank you. Before I talk about the dangerous goods vehicles, I'd like to talk about the facilities there first. The government the government is thinking out of the box by introducing the trampoline, the sand play area, and so on. I am concerned about the repair and maintenance, whether they will be done well. And I hope that the government will have more spare parts ready, because otherwise there will be a lot more downtime. I am also concerned about the narrow road space, and people and vehicles will be vying for the right of way. Now, there are motorized vehicles, there are bicycles, there may be skateboards, and there are wheelchair-bound people. Let's say over the weekend, on Saturdays, people are driving there, people are cycling there, and there are people strolling there, and this may create a dangerous scene. How will the administration address this problem? Now, turning now to parking, many members said that there is a shortage of parking spaces. You may shift the vehicles around. What about other vehicles? Now, members mentioned the nursery. Perhaps we can take full advantage of the nursery. Will the administration consider adding another level at the nursery area to accommodate the vehicles? And we can adhere to the principle of single site multiple use to achieve the best possible effect. So will the administration address these points, please? Deputy Secretary, bicycles first. In our vision, we hope that we can accommodate bicycles as well. Now, at the boardwalk under the Energizing Corridor, we are seeking to do that as well. From Central all the way down here, we do have this idea in mind. On the northern shore of Hong Kong Island, given the limited space, can we provide the greenway there to accommodate the people as well as the cyclists? We are conducting a feasibility study, and we hope that we will achieve a positive result. In terms of hardware, there is a pathway linking up the entire park, which is 6 meters wide. We can accommodate both people and cyclists. Would that give rise to any danger? And we are looking at this. Perhaps repair and maintenance, I defer to the ASD. Mr. Tai. Chairman, thank you. Thanks very much for the concern about the repair and maintenance. In terms of spare parts, we do reserve a stock of spare parts for this purpose. We do have the consultants for the facilities. We will be liaising with them to see what sort of spare parts should best be kept in store. We will make arrangement for this so that the LCSD will be in a position to maintain the facilities well enough. We will liaise with the manufacturers and the suppliers about the repair and maintenance to make sure that everything is as good as they should be. We're supposed to end the meeting at 6. Perhaps to play safe, we extend the meeting by no more than 15 minutes. The members expressed concerns about the utilization of the nursery site. So perhaps the Deputy Secretary might respond to this. Mr. Benjamin Hong, LCSD. Next to the Sun Yat-sen Memorial Park, we have community nursery. We also have another one at Belcher's Bay. This is not a large area at all. And this is very popular with the public. Every time we close application, the subscription is at least 20 times over. So this is very popular with the members of the public. If we are to lose the nursery or the community garden, then it will not be a good thing for the public. Well, more than one member pointed out that the community garden is an abandoned site. Well, like other community garden under the LCSD, this community garden has to be closed because of COVID. So people may get the perception that nothing much is happening there. And that's only because of the pandemic. So there are no activities, nothing is happening since January, and people get a feeling that it's been abandoned, but nothing can be further from the truth. This is a very popular site. Dr. Stephen Wong, Chairman. We walk past that area very often. The garden has been around for more than a decade. It's only now that I become aware that it's very popular. And I echo what you have to say. And let more people know if this is such a success. I've got two questions. In terms of management, this is a good facility. I am concerned about the hardware. So in terms of management, how will the LCSD be liaising with other stakeholders to make sure that this is a vibrant place? How can we make sure that this is going to be a more dynamic and vibrant place? Will you make sure that this is not going to be a dull and uninteresting place? And Designing Hong Kong wrote in with some recommendations. In Belcher's Bay, people are playing skateboarding and they are generating a lot of noise. This attracts some complaints. Roller skating and skateboarding and so on, they're generating a lot of noise. And is this the right place for these activities? I heard you say the intergenerational play area, and this may be a good idea, but is it the right place? Right, skateboarding. There is a fair distance from the residential dwellings, but there are many people there, I heard. In this site, in my presentation, it is a long and narrow site, and there is no site for skateboarding. In the consultation, there may be some such ideas, but this is going to be fitted in there. In the waterfront, we may not be able to accommodate skateboarding in every single site. In the Wan Chai waterfront, in the activity area, there is some space there for that. And we like to accommodate different things at different sites. We are talking about inclusiveness there. In terms of management, we will pay attention to members' point, repair and maintenance. And we do have specialists who will be responsible. Community liaison. We hope that this site can be used for different activities. I mentioned the eastern portion and the western portion. And we have a retaining wall. And we hope there's some arts practitioners might wish to take advantage of this retaining wall. Thank you. Thanks very much. Starry Lee raised her hand. And Mr. Frankie Yik would like to have a second go at it. Members who wish to have a second go, please raise their hands on Zoom. Historian Kong for the second time. Starry Lee is not here. Perhaps I'll invite Mr. Frankie Yik to take the floor for 3 minutes first, please. Thank you.
I'd like to address the recommendation from Mr. Lee Shen-kang, which was a very good idea. As Dr. Wong Yuen-shan said, I hope the government would understand the situation at the site over the past 10 years or so. I think underneath the site, cars could be accommodated and the community garden could remain. So this is a relatively straightforward project. I hope the government and the Deputy Secretary could achieve a win-win situation, accommodating both commercial needs and the needs of residents instead of creating new problems. Many members raised concerns about parking, so hopefully Mr. Yao can pay more attention to that. You said the site would be recovered in May from the Hong Kong Freight Transport Association said they would cease operation in April. I think we must establish development priorities, and time is needed to seek approval from the Public Works Subcommittee and then the Finance Committee. Since you have so limited time, would you work with the Transport Department to identify alternative sites for parking? Do you really have enough time? That is the question. I now invite Ms. Doreen Kong to speak for the second time. She has 3 minutes. And after that, Mr. Yao can offer a response. Ms. Kong. Thank you. I hope the Deputy Secretary can see for himself the parking situation next to the Western District Park Sports Center. There is a cul-de-sac and there are hundreds of cartons, and the place is very messy, and there are a lot of skips containing construction waste. There is a lot of illegal parking at that site, and it is very much abandoned. Mr. Frankie Yik talked about the community garden. I think that site should be put into proper use. At the Western District Park Sports Center, utilization is often not very high, especially at night. Many vehicles would park there illegally at night, so you should make the best use of that site so that drivers would not have to park their vehicles in Taiwan. Some remote car fanatics hope that sites could be, or dedicated sites would be made available for them to operate their remote controlled cars. So can a small site be provided for this purpose? Deputy Secretary. A number of members ask questions about trucks. This is something we would look at. Since the trade wishes to relocate more such vehicles in this area, we will certainly look at the provision of parking space as a whole in the area. For the remote controlled cars, we might not be able to accommodate a dedicated site in the park. Different parks have different characteristics. At the Belches Bay Park, such activities could be accommodated, so the different sites can accommodate the different needs. Ms. Starry Lee is now here. After I invite her to speak, this item will draw to a close. Ms. Starry Lee, 4 minutes. Thank you. Harbourfront development is of much interest to everyone, and I have seen consistent improvements. I hope more attention could be paid to the Kowloon East Harbourfront. I think the developments in this area lag behind other districts. So can you tell us more about your plans and objectives? Ms. Chang. Thank you very much. In the coming year, we hope to implement more projects on Hong Kong Island and Kowloon in order to further extend our harbourfront. In the coming year, there will be developments in Kowloon, including the Hoi Sham Park extension. And at Kai Tak, we have mobilized the private sector, and these projects will be realized next year. I hope our harbourfront could be extended further from the current 25 kilometers to 26 kilometers. All along, we have worked hard with different sections of our harbourfront, including those in Kowloon. To be honest, in recent years, there were substantial improvements in harbourfront development on Hong Kong Island, whereas in Kowloon, there is still a lot of room for improvement. I welcome the projects you mentioned, the Hoi Sham Park extension and Kai Tak, but your work should extend beyond that. You should look at the Hong Ham sludge treatment plant. I think that would be conducive to harbourfront development in Kowloon. I think successful examples on Hong Kong Island should be extended to other districts. I think the developments in Kowloon is lacking compared with Hong Kong Island. You can introduce more innovative elements, and hopefully as the pandemic eases, the public can enjoy the waterfront. Ms. Chang, we have heard your views. Qualitatively and quantitatively, well, these are elements we have emphasized on an equal basis. We have strived to inject character in different sections, and under the incremental approach, we hope to create harbourfront stretches of unique characteristic. And at Hong Ham, we will collaborate with NGOs and young people to inject more creativity. And these include comic artists and craftsmen. Hopefully these elements could be introduced in Kowloon. That's all for this item. Hopefully the Deputy Secretary would follow up on the comments and questions raised by members? If members support the submission of this project to the Public Works Subcommittee, hopefully we can have clearer answers later. And hopefully we will learn about the eventual decisions. Do members support the submission to this paper for consideration by the Public Works Subcommittee? Those in favor, please raise your hands. Please lower your hands. Those who are against, please raise your hands. There are none. So the majority of members support the submission of this paper to the PWSC. Thank you very much. Item number 7, any other business? We have none. Thank you all for attending the meeting. And I'd like to thank the administration for answering our questions. The meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much.